Venezuela denounces Guyana for initiating an illegal petition at the International Court of Justice on the Essequibo territory in violation of the Geneva Agreement. Barbados' government announces that there are no active coronavirus cases left in Barbados. The last remaining 5 active cases have recovered. And Mexico City security chief survives an armed ambush which left 3 people dead. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Camila Escalante. The government of Venezuela has denounced Guyana for initiating an illegal petition at the International Court of Justice on the Essequibo territory in violation of the Geneva Agreement. The Presidential Commission for the Defense of the Essequibo ratified the Geneva Agreement, signed in 1966, in which Venezuela's sovereignty over the Essequibo is recognized, and said that the aggression is part of a script devised by the United States.
It's curious because for the year 1899, Guyana wasn't a republic. There it is very evident that Guyana is acting under an imperialist order. They are acting to satisfy the interests of oil transnational companies, led directly, as it's been demonstrated, by ExxonMobil, an energy transnational based in the United States. This is within the aggression by the United States government against Venezuela. This new government came with that firm mandate to attack Venezuela.
What is happening right now is nothing more but another step in the climbing of aggressions against national independence, against the Venezuelan institutionality, against the Venezuelan state, and against the people of Venezuela. That's how we see it from the Bolivarian National Armed Forces when they attempt to make this move at the International Court of Justice, at the worst time of the government of Guyana, at the worst political time where there is a power vacuum, which was caused by a controversial election, which was helped putting the state in a situation where democracy failed. We continue saying that the sun of Venezuela rises in the Essequibo and in the hearts of Venezuelan soldiers by constitutional mandate. In Constitutional Article 328, it clearly states, one of the missions, or rather the mission of the Bolivarian Armed Forces, is to guarantee Venezuelans' independence, its sovereignty, and the integrity of its geographical spaces. Our sincere contribution always to the just cases of Venezuela, its independence, and we applaud this convocatory announcement, which has been instructed by President Nicolás Maduro Moros.
Guyana's Department of Energy, or the DOE, has shortlisted 19 firms to move to the next phase in its quest to market and trade its crude amid political uncertainty. The DOE began the search for an oil marketing trading company in February 2020, and 34 companies had expressed interest in supplying the service. A 5-member committee reviewed each application by looking at their respective qualifications and relevant experience. The company had negotiated with ExxonMobil for its share of oil from the Liza Destiny FPSO vessel. Brazil's Landless workers movement in the state of Paraná will be distributing more than 2,300 tons of food for those most in need throughout the weekend. Those on the receiving end of the act of solidarity have been among the most affected by the crisis provoked by the coronavirus, as well as those on the streets on the periphery of Curitiba. More than 230 tons of agrotoxin-free food has been donated by small farmers of the agrarian reform movement in the state of Paraná since April.
I believe that especially right now, during the pandemic, this action that the MST is taking portrays what Brazilians need to think about. We have to be human beings and share what one likes. It is good for me. Do I need it? Someone may need it. All human beings need that. For real charity is solidarity. Love for your neighbor. It is to think that if there is food on your plate, perhaps someone else doesn't have food on theirs.
In Bolivia, public hospitals are collapsing and closing as medical personnel are falling ill and with a higher number of patients with COVID-19. Meanwhile, there's talk about activating some churches for the first and second stage of attention. More details with Freddie Morales in La Paz.
The main state hospitals in the city of La Paz and El Alto are practically closed due to the contagion of medical personnel. This is the case at the largest medical specialization complex in the Miraflores neighborhood.
Following the intervention, the patient does the test, and if it's positive, then the staff that is in contact with them means now 2 of them have become positive. That's why we have isolated them and quarantined those suspected cases.
Just in the Miraflores health complex alone, 5 hospitals of different specialities have closed, and the hospitals enabled for care of COVID-19 have collapsed.
There are many limitations that the authorities have not been able to resolve, and the result is that clinical hospitals have closed. The Thorax Hospital, Gastroenterological El Altos Hollandes Hospital are closed. Other hospitals have exceeded capacity of patients. We have reached an extreme crisis, and there is risk that people will die at home.
There are no official figures, but it is estimated that there are over 300 infected health professionals in La Paz alone.
One of the most important facilities has 40 colleagues who are ill, others around 20 to 30 sick colleagues. The figure exceeds 200. Today, we must have more than 300 colleagues throughout the department, in the rural area, in the 2nd and 3rd level hospitals affected by the disease.
The crisis is national. Riberalta is an intermediate city of about 100,000 inhabitants in the department of Beni.
We currently have 81 health personnel who are positive, 56 officials infected only in the 1st level. Without counting the 2nd level and other hospitals, we have really reached the critical stage in Riberalta.
Starting next week, Christian churches have been enabled in La Paz to care for patients who are in the 1st or 2nd stage of the disease.
We have more than 100,000 churches in the country. In La Paz, we must have 10,000 churches. In each area, there is always a church. They can be used as transitory centers.
The crisis goes hand in hand with a shortage of testing. In the city of Santa Cruz, the only state laboratory has 4,000 tests pending, which involves a 20-day delay in the delivery of results. 500 tests are being carried out per day, as 3 times that amount is required, all while the Ministry of Health has restricted the enabling of private laboratories.
Today is the 41st anniversary of the Confederation of Campesino Workers of Bolivia. Under President Evo Morales, this workers' confederation had access to power through their affiliation to the movement towards socialism under the Pacto de Unidad. Today, they are fighting to restore democracy against the coup regime. During the coup, the director of the workers' radio station, Jose Aramayo, was tied to a tree by fascist anti-Evo protesters. He's one of the many people who were assaulted by far-right thugs known as the Pititas. Aramayo pleaded with the mob saying, "Please, I have 2 children." We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Barbados has crossed 30 days with no recorded cases of COVID-19. This while all repatriated nationals who had contracted the virus have been discharged from hospital.
The good news is that we are now on day 35 without any local transmission of COVID-19. And even better news, all persons who were in isolation have been discharged, so there are no confirmed cases that we are still treating at the isolation facility at Harrison Point. Also important is the fact that all persons who were repatriated on the flights from the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada have been discharged from quarantine. And this is indeed good news.
As such, the country is moving to open its borders to commercial flights and further relax restrictions imposed to stem the spread of the viral respiratory illness.
Will get itself ready to welcome visitors, and we will start with the reopening of restaurants and hotels and attractions and entertainment centers and sports, not merely for our citizens to enjoy, but eventually for the visitors who will be coming back gradually to experience our culture and hospitality. The local campaigns will outline for us the importance of tourism and our reimagined tourism product. The tourism authorities will launch the new Barbados Tourism Brand Identity campaign to all the world, inviting all to come see, taste, and experience their perfect home away from home.
And the CARICOM chair has responded to condemnation from some, including Trinidad and Tobago's former Attorney General, John Jeremy, that her statements about Guyana's political crisis could subjuice the matter. Motley made no apologies for her recent criticism of GCOM's chief elections officer.
The truth hurts. I have nothing more to say. The truth hurts. But what we must never do in CARICOM is avoid the truth and avoid our principles. Thank you very much and have a pleasant day.
And Jamaica has recorded 6 new COVID-19 cases, increasing the overall tally to 684. 4 of the new patients recently arrived on flights coming from the United States, while 2 are contacts of a confirmed case. Meanwhile, 5 more people have recovered to a total of 526. There are currently 158 active COVID-19 cases. St. Kitts and Nevis has registered 10 additional cases of COVID-19 after police detained 13 Haitian migrants who entered the country illegally. The island had previously confirmed 15 cases of the novel coronavirus, with all people having recovered.
The police would have executed a search warrant in the Keys community and found 10 Haitians in a house and in the mountainside of Keys. They were handed over to the immigration department as they entered the country illegally. So they are illegal migrants. They're all males. We found, well, as I said before, we had 10 in the early part of Monday, and by evening we had 12, and yesterday morning we found another one. So we now have 13 adult male Haitians in immigration/police custody.
In Cuba, 3 new contingents of the Henry Reed Brigade are leaving for Guinea-Bissau and the Caribbean territories of Martinique and Anguilla to join collaborative efforts against COVID-19. Medical professionals are set to depart upon the request of foreign governments amid threats and a propaganda campaign by the United States which targets Cuba's medical cooperation. The Trump administration has alleged that there have been violations in the treatment and payment of Cuban doctors, but Miguel Diaz-Canel has slammed these false accusations, saying that the empire lies to confuse.
To talk about Cuban medical collaboration and the 65.8% of women in these brigades, we must talk about what the Cuban Women's Federation has represented over these 60 years. Each of our doctors, our nurses, and the health personnel who form part of these brigades is a demonstration of how important and how necessary it is to have a unitary women's organization. A women's organization which unites in its ranks all women regardless of any personal or demographic characteristic. And for Cuban women, it is to feel tremendous pride in being able to count on this highly qualified personnel and with a very high human sensibility to represent Cuba.
Our nation is giving a great lesson in solidarity and humanity. The health professionals, thanks to the teachings of Comandante Fidel, write glorious pages for Cuba and for the world. We do not need the empire's blessing to cure a sick person, to offer a phrase of encouragement to the needy.
Havana's blue skies have turned gray after a dense cloud of dust from the Sahara blanketed Cuba. The desert dust continues its passage through the Caribbean and parts of Latin America. Nayara Tardo has the story from the capital.
Cuban experts say that the greatest concentration of Sahara dust was produced this Thursday east of Havana, though the event, which happens every year at the end of spring and at the beginning of summer, had a significant relevance on this occasion. Although the sky already looks clear, Some gray remains scattered in the horizon. Forecasts indicate that the dry cloud is headed down to Central America and Yucatan in the Gulf of Mexico.
It has been a very concentrated powder, which has come in that cloud. In Puerto Rico, for example, measurements have been taken of the concentrations over the past 20 years, and none has had the concentration that this has had. In 50 or 60 years, this is the strongest Sahara dust cloud we have seen.
In the fishing village of Casablanca in the east of the Cuban capital, residents are astonished by the pale view in the Caribbean midsummer.
You couldn't see the clouds, just the cargo ships. You couldn't see the cargo ships much.
I'm 76 years old, and never had I heard that in my life.
I just saw that the sky was very gray.
In Havana, the temperatures rise, and while the dust of Sahara moves away from the island, health authorities insist on using respiratory protection due to the damage that this may cause, especially in the midst of COVID-19. Health experts say that this phenomenon has an effect on the formation of cyclones, as dry air inhibits the formation of clouds, notably weakening them.
3 people have been killed in an ambush on Mexico City's Secretary of Citizen Security, Omar Garcia Harfuch. 2 of the secretary's police escorts and a female civilian was killed in the attack. Several others, including a family on their way to work, were also injured. Harfuch has been hospitalized for a bullet wound and grenade projectile.
The head of public security of Mexico City is wounded, and there are fatal victims from the attack. All this undoubtedly has to do with the work that's being carried out to guarantee peace and security.
The security chief has since tweeted saying, "This morning we were attacked by the CJNG. 2 colleagues and friends of mine lost their lives. I have 3 bullet wounds and several shards. Our nation must continue to confront cowardly organized crime. We will continue working," end quote. A corruption scheme has been unearthed in Honduras with reports that mobile hospitals were purchased at $48 million. Investigations have revealed that a high-level official gave that money to a shell company.
People are rejecting corruption across Honduras. Street vendors perform poetry condemning the scourge while selling their goods.
They don't care about poor people. They want to trick those who are ignorant and crush the humble. They are afraid of guerrilla groups, so they silence those who speak and congratulate those who steal millions.
The population has vowed to dismantle corruption as this quiet rises over the loss of millions and the crisis stemming from the collapse of the healthcare system.
These corrupt, rogue officials steal millions. I bet if I steal $8 or a pair of flip-flops, I would go to jail, and those criminals are making laws to protect themselves and prosecute petty thieves.
There are corruption allegations against the director of strategic investment, Marco Bogran. He is accused of paying $46 million to the alleged representative of the global SDI company, but the organization has denied the purchase and has accused the negotiator as being a scammer.
If you look at the top of the invoice, the performa invoice that they sent out, those same numbers are at the top of his page. He's using our registrations for credibility of his own company, which really, the only company that is there is just, I think he has one company registered, but the rest of it is just websites. There's no physical place of business.
Since March, when the state of emergency was implemented to stem the spread of COVID-19, the government announced the purchase of supplies, including respirators and oxygen, that were overpriced. Even then, the embattled director said it was a mistake to have the purchase audited.
Amid a global pandemic, it simply was not the time to launch an investigation that was nothing more than a witch hunt for non-existent signs of corruption. I believe Hondurans must learn to trust government officials in spite of the corruption we've seen in the past.
The Ministry of Public Affairs has opened an investigation into Bogran, who is also the manager of Invest. Bogran had assured the negotiator that the transaction was done in good faith and that nobody knew where he was.
We're taking one last short break. Join us again after this. Welcome back. South Africa's Ministry of Public Health and Welfare announced on Thursday that the country has recorded more than 111,000 cases of COVID-19. 103 new deaths were also recorded over the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of deaths to 2,205. Authorities indicated that during the day, more than 34,122 tests were carried out in various cities. This comes as some provinces report the lack of beds to care for the number of patients. In Uganda, the Ministry of Health has announced the implementation of measures to contain the spread of COVID-19, as well as the creation of an app to train healthcare workers remotely. We have more details coming from our CGTN colleagues.
Minister for Health, General Thachen, has said Uganda has progressed to stage 3 of COVID-19 pandemic with clusters of community transmission, meaning serious containment measures are needed for any eventuality.
The expansion of the hospitals to the 40,000 beds has already begun. We have the designs, the contracting process is ongoing, and the mobilization of resources. And we do hope that not later than 1 month's time, this will begin. The training of the health workers already began. So recruitment is also ongoing for additional health workers.
The minister also noted that Nambole Stadium will be used to accommodate mild and moderate cases of COVID-19 in the country.
And we move the mild to moderate cases to large areas like Nambole, where we can have segregated auxiliary cares that can handle maybe 200, 250 groups separated, because they don't need too much attention.
The minister also warned people in Kampala, especially in crowded places like Chikubo, taxi parks, to always be vigilant and follow the guidelines.
That we do have danger. In Kampala, we have recorded over 34 cases. These 34 are an area of concern. They are among us. If we have removed 34, we don't know who is out there. We could only know if we were doing mass testing, which we are not able to do.
In the same development, the Ministry of Health and Community Health Academy at Last Mile Health, Makerere University College of Health Sciences, has launched a capacity building app.
It's timely because we know that we are not supposed to be in that close proximity with each other, so we need to recognize social distancing as required by the guidelines of Ministry of Health. So this app gives an opportunity to be in a class, to learn and have your capacity built without necessarily being in a group of people.
The app closes the training gap by providing access to multimedia content with up-to-date information related to COVID-19 response directly on a smartphone.
And this capacity building application is a large boost to our endeavors to train health workers. Our aim is to have many cohorts of case management teams, large cohorts of surveillance officers, contact tracers, psychosocial people, and so on and so forth. We need everybody to be knowledgeable, not only about COVID, but also about the other essential services and the need for us to maintain the gains that we made over the years.
According to the World Health Organization, 80% of people suffering from COVID-19 will have mild to moderate cases, and 20% with severe cases. Zahara Bigaba, UBC.
Now moving on to Morocco, where cafes and restaurants in Rabat reopened their doors on Thursday for the first time in 3 months. The government also allowed the reopening of gyms, hair salons, and restaurants in the city at 50% capacity. All venues have to abide by social distancing and hygiene measures. Morocco, where a lockdown has been in place since March 20th, has reported 11,279 cases of the virus and 216 deaths.
We follow the health measures. A committee came to guide us. As you can see, there is a duct tape between tables and 1.5 meters and more between the tables. Also, there are hygiene measures more than before, and we are making an effort.
A huge explosion, an orange fireball, lit up the night sky in Tehran, according to the Ministry of Defense. It all occurred at a gas storage facility and fortunately caused no casualties. The fire, which took place in a non-residential area, was quickly controlled. Local media showed the aftermath of the explosion in daylight, with at least 2 large cylindrical tanks damaged by the fire, along with a scorched nearby field. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at tellustenglish.net. And we're on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Camila Escalante. Thank you for watching.